Number 132, Tidal Najarala. Ha! I love the new mechanic of pinball ricocheting its shots at you. And the new colors, too. But beyond that, I don't remember many changes for Tidal. I expect something a bit more sweepy, wavy designs and surges of water, something a bit more like Namiel. Still a fun new addition for its time with lots of potential. A bit yet unfulfilled 4 stars, I suppose. 5 out of 5. Blue, especially lighter blues, are my favorite color. So you take a monster I already love and give him this cool, shaded color palette, a recipe for me to love him even more. I was also glad to see that he was way more manageable than the other mandatory subspecies fights. Now, I knew he had the water element, but I wasn't expecting that he'd be using his scales as mirrors to deflect those attacks. Plus, you fight him in the map with one of the best themes. Easily one of the best subspecies around. I really don't understand the frustration with his projectiles ricocheting. Never found that to be an issue, and might actually prefer it to the original species' AoEs. Also, a bit interesting that it was one of the monsters to receive an apex. Tidal Najarala is really weird, giving the already threatening giant snake a tool most hunters have never even heard of before. Trigonometry. How the hell this thing ricochets his water shots off of his scales to hit you, I'll never know. Then again, regular Najarala's sonic blast scales were never really explained either, so I guess weird scale-related powers just kinda run in the family. 5 stars. One of my favorite subspecies. Super fun, super cool, all around awesome. If Najarala comes back, Tidal should also return in the expansion. 4.5 stars. Number 131, Nibelsnarf. 4 stars. He is a fun, goofy looking sandfish. The fact that you can bait him to eat barrel bombs is great. It's also pretty silly that his sand beam has water blight, so I guess that confirms that he's got like a bunch of spit mixed in it. And also the animation has him backing up like it has a whole bunch of recoil to it. He's great, just not quite as good as Gobel. Also, slight point reduction since they didn't keep his initial encounter where the zone has all these mounds of sand and you have to figure out which one he's in. I love Nibble so goddamn much. Finding him, while not too hard, is a neat start-off fight gimmick. Then, during the fight, bombs have a great utility in getting him to be fished out of the sand. The fact that you can even fish him out like that is so cool. His little eyes are very cute in my opinion, coupled with the cutest name of Nibelsnarf. You have a monster that just makes me smile. 5 out of 5. To me, he is Gobel done right. I was fighting his higher rank version in GU and thinking, damn, if I were one of the developers that participated in the making of this monster, I would be very proud of what I helped to create. His animations are so well polished, his hit zones are very sensible, his gimmicks are so creative, and his visual and sound design are very recognizable that I genuinely think he's a better desert monster than Diablos, and one of the best Leviathans out there, superior to even Mizutsune. Even though I haven't used his armor sets, I appreciate the creativity behind them. To me, Nibble is a 5 out of 5, and I would have given him a 10 out of 5 if I could. Nibelsnarf was an attempt to make a Gobel that could function outside of the water, but I don't think they quite were able to capture the same energy Gobel has. My main issue with Nibelsnarf is the moveset. It entirely consists of bites, charges, and burrowing underground to bite you. The one cool attack he has is the sand beam, and even that is really slow. Their charges are also a little bit tedious to deal with once you've run out of barrel bombs, especially in 4th gen since he no longer tracks you all that well. However, what I do love about Nibelsnarf is how much you are able to bully him. Feeding him bombs and watching them explode in his bellies before fishing him out of the sand is a really fun experience that never grows tiring, and it's fun to boop him on the snout to send him tumbling out of the sand. I also love that you can use sonic bombs to lure him towards where you want him to emerge. Probably the single most creative use of the sonic bombs in the series. They're also a far better sand swimmer than Cephadrome ever was. Plus their name is Nibelsnarf. 3 out of 5. No meme. I love this monster. The fight is really fun with a lot of gimmicks and nuance, tons of personality in his animations, some of the most unique part breaks, and he adds a lot to desert ecology. He needs to come back. Number 130, Bishaten. They gave such a strange monster such a goofy and fun personality. Like how with the fruit, when you knock him down, it all spills out everywhere and you can use that to heal yourself, or you can use it to blind him or give him a status. It's such a cool amount of effort to give him in the personality department. It's always a treat when a monster shows intelligence. In this case, that intelligence is quirky and mischievous, but that absolutely adds to the personality and enjoyment of the fight. Genuinely such a creative monster. A fanged beast that looks like no other and uses its tail not just as an extra arm, but as a single leg to swing at you from up on high. And the pouch with the fruit throwing is a cool way to tie to its diet in the fight. Also, it's really funny to knock him over and see the fruit just kind of fly out everywhere. He really uses every part of his body to his advantage, and every time I fight him, I appreciate him more and more. Another awesome member of Rise's cast of new monsters. Bishaten's got a very unique and top-notch design. I especially like the Hachiwa-inspired tail, which he often uses like a third hand. The variety of fruits and different ways he uses them against you makes him an admittedly fun fight too. 5 stars. Bishaten is a silly little monkey guy. Fun design. For all the monkeys we have, it's able to still stand out. The pseudo wings are interesting, the tail hand is fun, if a bit weird looking. I know monkeys have prehensile tails, but just making it like an actual hand is a little on the nose. Decent colors too. The fight is great. The fruit gimmick is similar to Samra's shell one, but I prefer it due to how hectic it makes the fight. Being able to pick the fruit up and use it against a Bishaten is also a plus. Fun, frantic moves that add to the hectic feel. Bishaten is just a good time all around. I hadn't thought about it that much, but they might be one of my favorite base Rise newcomers. Sort of surprising 5 out of 5. Number 129. Tigerstripe Zamtrios. Maybe not quite as cool as the original, but still a fun monster, whose moveset is actually very different from the regular Zamtrios. He's a good deal more challenging as well, as being much faster and swapping rapidly between his normal and inflated forms. No ice armor, of course, but that's why he does the rapid form change. Overall, a really good subspecies. 5 stars. I don't personally like him quite as much as the original, but he's definitely not worse. They expanded on his ball mode and made that form a lot more threatening. He was genuinely a big wall for me in 4U, and I respect him for that. Wasn't expecting him to be such a wall for me, but Zamtrios is one of my favorite monsters in 4U, and seeing a bloated version of him absolutely destroy me was a cool thing to overcome. In my opinion, he's close to perfection. The problem is how damn near unavoidable his rolling attacks are, because they come out so quickly, and they can be incredibly cheap as a result. He was such a wall in 4U up until the servers closed, in my opinion. I've seen so many squad wipes by this one guy. We're now exiting the bottom 100 with number 128. Scarred Yian Garuga. Iceborne Garuga massively improved the monster as a whole. It's hectic, but not to the point of being obnoxious. It's actually quite fun. The design was also an upgrade, not just a purple cutku anymore. It surprises me that it screams not even half as much as Kezu either, and it can give Deviljho a run for its money somewhat. I really hope that they keep him as that, not as strong as a Rajang or Espinas, but he can put up a fight. Regular Iceborne Garuga, I am actually willing to give 5 stars. Scarred is just the same with one extra attack and some nice movement changes. Stays longer in the air, for example. 4 stars. I guess they finally just classified this as a variant, but there's really not that much to say. Honestly, the history behind Scarred is more interesting than the monster itself. Iceborne took a difference that Garuga had between games, Scarred and Freedom 2 and 4, Unscarred and Freedom Unite and GU, and turned it into a proper variation, which is pretty cool. As for the fight itself, for all intents and purposes, Scarred Garuga is just Tempered Garuga. Hell, in Iceborne, they share their own research level, except Scarred gains a couple extra moves. Don't get me wrong, the flurry of flames he can release does look really cool, and they're more adept at flying than the base form without it being annoying, but that is kinda just it. Like, this is pretty much the exact amount of stuff I expect from a first-gen subspecies. I kinda thought we were above this by now. 3 out of 5. I am damaged. It's pretty nice in gameplay, and they are specifically a tempered Yian Garuga, just to show the consistency that Scarred is a more powerful and skilled version of Garuga. Fight-wise, its only real difference is the rapid fireball attack. It may only be one attack, but my god, that move is sick. Iceborne gave Yian Garuga a great facelift, and I think he's a 5-star monster. Scarred is cool, but he's like one of 3 versions of the same idea. He's cool, and I love the rapid fire fireballs, but I don't know, I kind of feel like he should be mixed in with the base Garuga and just kind of be given as a random chance spawn, but as he is, he's still cool, so I'll give him 4 stars. He adds to Yian Garuga in some ways, just not massively. The idea is cool, but it felt redundant in Iceborne, since tempered monsters were the same idea stretched across any monster. Scarred Yian Garuga really just felt like tempered Yian Garuga, because that's really exactly what it was. Number 127. Drilltusk Tetsucabra. One thing I can say about Drilltusk is that it serves to make Tetsucabra a lot more intimidating. That aside, however, it's just a little uninspired. What's your idea? To give the frog with tusks that uses boulders a bigger tusk and bigger boulders? We're feeling daring today, aren't we? All in all, it's pretty unoffensive and not the worst, but I don't think it was really needed, you know? I think this is actually a pretty solid deviant. He's a bit boring conceptually, but I think that gameplay-wise, his moveset additions are very solid. He gets good upgrades that increase the difficulty of the fight, but not to the extent of turning it into a Superman dive fest. His rock suplex is cool, and it's awesome how he actually downs himself when he uses it. It's a neat way of showing that the monster is really pushing itself to its limits, which really works for a deviant. He's still a little forgettable though, so I don't think he reaches 5 stars, but 4 I think makes sense for him. Just Tetsucabra with a really good deviant moveset. Beauty in simplicity. It didn't do more than it needed to do in order to make Tetsu more intimidating, and its boulder suplex and charged frog splash are excellent new attacks. 3 stars. I don't really like the whole only one horn, claw, or tooth is overgrown except on Bloodbath. Even with big rocks and a WWE suplex, it doesn't really matter. Another deviant who didn't have a lot of thought behind it, sadly. For me, it's a 4 star. It's still Tetsucabra, so it's got a good base and a pretty good design, but especially now that I've begun grinding out his gear, the fight's quite boring. His hopping with his rock and turning that trips you is very annoying. In G rank, he gets better with some new stuff. I can't really drop it too much, but it's probably my least favorite Tetsucabra. If it wasn't for the already good species that Tetsucabra is, it would probably be a little bit lower. Number 126. Dreadqueen Rathian. When I first played through Generations, Dreadqueen was the first deviant to really make me think, this is a really good reinterpretation of the base monster, and is one of only 2 deviants in base Generations who I believe is an improvement over the original. Though with that said, I wouldn't say she is my second favorite deviant in the game. They really solidified Dreadqueen as the Poison Rathian, giving her some cool new attacks with her tail, and giving her those cool poison shards that she can leave on the ground that act as pretty neat hazards. Her moveset was so solid that both gold and silver stole moves, the landing tail sweep and the double flame explosion respectively. Honestly, don't have much more to add here. I just think she is a really good deviant overall. 4 out of 5. That bitch is toxic as f***. A very solid deviant. She's not overtuned or half-baked like some of the other ones. Dreadqueen still fills Rathian's role as a general fight. Would love for the Dreads to make a proper return getting all the additions the other forms have gotten. While I don't consider equipment as part of the monster, I will say that Dreadqueen has the best looking Rathian armor. Dreadqueen is such a breath of fresh air. For as famous as the Rathian's poisonous backflip is, she never really uses it all that much in her fight. So Dreadqueen decides that that poison should be the first thing to take up to 11. And just the addition of leaving poisonous spikes in the ground do so much to differentiate her. Even though Rathian has so many variations already, Dreadqueen is truly the standout amongst them. 5 stars. 4 out of 5. I love Dreadqueen, but as one of the few deviants I've had the privilege or pain of fighting a few times, she's a bit of a bastard at times. I love the design, I love that it's Rathian with her poison turned all the way up to 11, and I would love to see Dreadqueen make a return. 5 out of 5 for me, basically Rathian, but much better. The heavy emphasis on Venom is perfect for this monster. It honestly gives Chameleos a run for its money. I personally love this monster, even though I struggle the most with poison. Number 125. Banbaro. I honestly really love him, fitting nicely as either my 3rd or 4th favorite Brute Wyvern. Love his Viking armor, and he's got a fun gimmick with picking up environmental debris as he charges at you. Plus, you can't be that bad if you're related to Duramboros. Having him as this wandering nomad was fun, even if he didn't exactly fit every map. Hoarfrost? Definitely, as he's a reindeer. Ancient Forest? Maybe, it's kind of like a casual deer, but the Wild Spire feels like you're hunting an elk in Capella's big game hunting. And the Recess, if you fight specifically in a zone with no lavas or crystals, maybe, like areas 5, 6, or 8, can feel like fighting maybe like a bighorn sheep in the mountains, Coral and Rotten Vale? No, 5 out of 5. 2 words, Moose Wyvern. You had me at Moose Wyvern. In all seriousness though, Banbaro is such a cool intro to the Iceborne expansion. The way it interacts with other biomes is really neat, with lava boulders instead of snow and trees that it can hurl at ya. If you get another ice arena, I hope Banbaro comes back, ready to just smash ya with a snowball. A really cool Brute Wyvern. I just hated that he was in every other place other than the Hoarfrost Reach. I assumed Shara Ishvalda is like the main reason some monsters were nomadic in Iceborne or something like that, because he was screwing up with the ecosystems with his digging or something. I absolutely love Banbaro. We desperately need more giant herbivores, and Banbaro delivers. And he fits in nicely in his niche of being a big Arctic herbivore that isn't quite as big as Gammoth. He's the nice midpoint. His design is just awesome. I love the antlers, I love how huge and fluffy he is, perfectly adapted to the cold. He has a fun fight that makes good use of the terrain he's in, with like the picking up snow and rocks and all that. I love his ecology of being a gardener, basically. And he has some awesome Viking looking gear. It's so good, right up my alley. His one and only problem is being made an invader for no good reason. Every time I see him outside the Hoarfrost, it hurts my head. He should have just been an Arctic exclusive. Yeah, I know, they have reasons, but they could have just as easily say that he's an animal adapted to a place that's very seasonal. If they bring him back, I want him to be a snow map exclusive. So I'll give him a 4 stars just because of that one flaw. The snow moose is everywhere, jokes aside. I do like that he's one of the few monsters who has attacks that changes based on the map. It's a shame that for being as big as he is and as common as he has very few turf wars. All he really has is a copy paste with Beatotus off of the Juratotus and Baroth one. And getting beat up by Barioth kinda seems like a bit of a miss there. Number 124. Pyre Rakna-Kadaki. Pyre Rakna-Kadaki is probably one of the most blatant examples of a subspecies that could have just been a variant. Like, she lives in the same habitat and has no element switch. The only thing subspecies-y about her is the design, which I will say is amazing. The no element switch is especially annoying as we had 2 other fire subspecies in Sunbreak, and you choose to leave the fire monster also as fire. With that aside, if we're judging Pyre as a variance, then they are a pretty great one. Like I said, the design is stellar. Swapping the black and white of the original with the orange demon horns makes for one of the best looking variations in the series. The new moves she has are pretty cool. I especially like the new backwards charge she has. It's a nice twist on a pretty standard charge attack. The way she utilizes her pyrantulas is always really fun, with multiple of her attacks throwing them off before she calls them into the air to position them around her, attaching them to string and then setting off mini explosions to each one. It's a very creative retooling of the original Rakna's concept, and it makes for some fun area control. Plus, she maintains the great fight flow that the original Rakna had. I also really like how they brought in a variant of her small monster counterparts with her. Granted, it was kind of required for her fight to function, but still, I would have loved to see Glacial Oroctors or Tigerstripe Zamites in future games. All in all, if this was a variant, it would have probably been a 5. As a subspecies, I expect a little bit more in terms of difference. Like, at least fully commit to her being a blast monster, as in replace all of her fire with blast. It's not the most drastic change, but it is something. 4 out of 5 for the Demon Spider-Milf. Pyre Rakna-Kadaki is a huge improvement from normal Rakna-Kadaki. Granted, she is another fire element subspecies, which did make me a tad disappointed when I first saw her. But after I then fought her, my first impressions about her quickly changed. First of all, her color scheme is vastly improved. Changing her white webs into obsidian black threads with hints of reddish orange was a phenomenal change to her overall design. It made her pop out much more than her normal counterpart. Second, her fight was somehow improved farther than normal Rakna-Kadaki, making her able to shoot out flames from her webs that are attached to her pyrantulas, which is a cool ass name by the way. Both made her fight more interesting and far more chaotically fun than it already was. Third, she is an amazing anomaly investigation monster to hunt. Due to her being able to bring back her webbing after you break it, means you can just break it all over again and get a buttload of both anomaly points and anomaly investigations. It's because of these reasons and more that I personally think Pyre Rakna-Kadaki Rakna-Kadaki is an amazingly crafted and designed monster that is for some reason a subspecies. 4.7 out of 5 for the Molten Spider Mommy. I really enjoy fighting her. She evolves the concepts of her babies from just being a way of movement. She gets a few other smaller touches, such as her backwards bulldoze and the occasional blast element usage. Overall, it's been a while since we got a subspecies that's pretty similar, but also feels like a strict upgrade. Like the Gen 1 and 2 subspecies. 5 out of 5. A genuinely great subspecies. I love the explosive twist and how it amps up everything in normal Rakna with an infusion of blast. She's got a great color scheme as well as some awesome horns, and she's the first example of having a small monster subspecies, which I have been waiting for a while. So yeah, gets a 5-star from me. 5 stars if she was a variant, because the fight is cool, literally a cartoon bomb spider. Sad that it's classified as a subspecies when it doesn't change that much for those particular standards. The horns are cool, and the pyrantulas die quickly, thank God. 4 out of 5 for her. Number 123, Gigginox. Unironically, one of my favorite monsters. Gigginox is just such a gnarly looking animal, with its flat, leech-like appendages, lamprey mouth, eyeless head, and bioluminescent markings. She's swift and nimble, especially in her preferred biome of deep, dark caves. In the heart of the earth, she utilizes both wall and ceiling to outmaneuver her prey. Occasionally, she'll dangle from said ceiling to lob globs of poisonous bile, creating the sick silhouette that her official render uses wisely. The quadrupedal wyvern rig works really well for Gigginox. She looks great sulking around on all fours. She feels menacing and dangerous in ways that Kezu in all its naked chicken glory does not. Also, can we talk about the use of her babies, because the Giggy are brilliant. You can find them in most of Tri's maps right from the very start. They're just these little annoying grubs that drain your health if you let them latch on you, akin to the later Zamites. They're annoying when you're trying to mine or when facing another monster, but they're mostly pretty harmless. Later on in the game, you get to see their adult form, and to your horror, she lays this gooey sack that constantly spawns baby Gigi. It's not that hard to destroy, but if left alone, it can become a real nuisance. It's a great bit of foreshadowing and a unique fight mechanic. I can't think of any other monster who produces a destructible spawning spot for smaller helper monsters. And to spice things up even further, those sacks can be decoys which explode and poison you. In G rank, she even lays it on her back, becoming a mobile turret for her blood-sucking babies, which is just ingenious. I love her dearly and am endlessly frustrated that she hasn't been seen outside of Tri and its derivatives. I want her in Wilds more than any other older monster. With her spooky appearance and subterranean locale, she'd be a great fit. Gigginox would not look out of place next to Balahara or Doshiguma. Hell, bring back Kezu too. Give these two weirdos the best turf war ever. 5 out of 5. Gigginox isn't even in Riders. The disrespect for this gal. I was actually really surprised to see how many people also gave it 4 stars. I think as a monster, she's definitely not near any of my favorites, but conceptually, she's a fantastic and uniquely designed monster that we don't get to see a lot. I think monsters that change weak spots depending on if they're enraged or not is a cool concept that should be utilized more, and also the whole egg sack thing, especially in G rank when you can put it on his back and make hunters kind of hesitate on whether they can break it or if it's going to explode, is really cool. Better Kezu. It looks cooler, it has the egg sacks and the hit zones changing when it's angry. Such a great idea, and I'm genuinely mad that this thing hasn't made a comeback. Also, the gear is sick as hell. 5 out of 5. Gigginox has been absolutely shafted the past 2 generations, and I will not stand for it. It is a far more engaging fight than Kezu, and the armor and weapons look awesome. Number 122, Deadeye Yian Garuga. Conceptually, Deadeye, I think, is one of the cooler deviants, as in they have an actual reason to be the way that they are. Deadeye are notably smaller than regular Garuga. They are the runts of the litter. As a result, in order to survive, they must become much more aggressive than their standard counterparts. And this is why a Deadeye is rare. Most runts don't survive. In combat, they pretty much are a more aggressive Garuga, with an even deadlier poison, and seeing as I already really like Garuga, I think it works out quite well, even if they aren't one of the changes that most drastically deviates from the base form. 4 out of 5, more Garuga is not a bad thing. I like the idea that this is a young Garuga that was the runt of the litter, and Rocky montages himself to become one of the more deadly monsters in the eyes of the guild. I also have a soft spot for monsters that roar so loud that it can damage a hunter. That said, I'm not a huge fan of the fights or the equipment. Deadeye is just an asshole. They canonically go around beating up other monsters for fun, the missing eye being a direct result of them getting too in over their heads. All their ability, the stronger roar, the faster combos, the enhanced poison, all made and battle tested to ruin as many other monsters' days as possible, and I love them for it. The ridiculously fast combos are a brilliant extension of the regular Garuga moveset, and the green and purple Disney villain-esque color scheme is a perfect match for their personality. 5 stars. Probably the best version of the Yian Garuga getting mutilated and becoming deadly for it. On a concept level, he's great, but his fight is just like Yian Garuga, but a bit more. I feel like Deadeye could lean more into being smart and crafty. That could elevate him, but as he is, I'll give him a solid 4. While the fight is more aggressive, that's kinda expected with a Garuga. Kinda boring that they still can't come up with something for Garuga that isn't just another damaged one with aspects from another monster, like the Nargacuga Eye Glow, and the same poison as Dreadqueen. The most interesting thing with Deadeye is it being smaller than the base species. Number 121, Yian Garuga. Love the design and the concept. Taking the fairly basic Yian Garuga and making it genuinely intimidating and challenging is such a good idea. Exceptionally satisfying to hit it in the very large beak with the hammer or the hunting horn. Also, purple's my favorite color, so that's a bonus. I love Yian Garuga. What a great turnabout of expectations. With his similarity to the Kutku cousins, you wouldn't expect him to be as ferocious as he is, but he is an angry, angry murder chicken, and will absolutely push your back in if you let him. I have nothing but admiration for the design too. Ultimately, his morphology isn't too different from Yian Garuga, but the change of colors, the slimming of his bucket beak, and the addition of all those gnarly spikes and proto-feathers come together to make a pretty badass design, especially the polishing he received in Iceborne. And hey, our first monster with his own theme music, and what a wild, off-kilter theme it is, perfectly fitting for the guy. 4 out of 5. Fierce and relentless, this is a Yian that grew up on the wrong side of town and is gonna take it out on you. Love purple, and the white mane is a great touch. The iconic metallic screech is great. Design-wise, love it. The fact that it gives the goofy and mostly non-threatening bird wyverns a somewhat dangerous member is also appreciated, but the fight, though upgraded and revamped through the generations, was never a favorite, though I might just be bitter about all the times I carded to the Insta Rush animation cancel. Wish there were more monsters in the ilk of Yian Garuga, not just in the case of a powerful bird wyvern, which there definitely need to be more of, but also for the monsters that are closely related to one another, i.e. Monoblos Diablos and Uragan Radoban. That aside, Garuga himself is such a punk bastard, and I love him a lot, and not just because he's purple, although that's a big plus in my favor. He is a tad repetitive since he borrows a lot from Rathian, but his sheer aggression makes him all his own. 4 out of 5. Iceborne rendition? Excellent. Top 10 monsters. Anything before that, I want to vomit. I hate old Gen Garuga deeply. Number 120, Shogun Ceanataur. I recently fought this thing in GU, and wow, what a package of a monster. Has a great design, sleek and sharp. I also really enjoyed the fights. Monster Hunter encounters are at their best when fighting the creature multiple times is still fun. I wanted to get myself the very cool looking armor set, and the hunt was just never not interesting. When Shogun draws out those long claws, you know it's getting serious. It's just a great monster, and I'd be more than happy to see it return once again in Wilds. 5 out of 5. Best crab by a mile. The design is great. The ability to break the starting shell, to give him a Gravio skull that can then shoot water at you is an awesome way to make the fight harder as it goes along. The claws are wonderfully threatening as well. The really good stuff happens in the battle itself. Shogun just doesn't let up, and it's honestly terrifying. My first cart in Sunbreak was to this guy. It was tough, a real challenge. After a couple of fights, I got used to it, and he's not that hard, but my first impression always made me fear Shogun when I do go up and fight him. Sunbreak also gave him Bleed, which was a great addition. Just a 5 out of 5 all around. Shogun Ceanataur is an absolute 5-star monster, and is especially great when paired with Daimyo Hermitaur. Excellent fight, great gear, good if straightforward ecology, excellent design. I would probably rank him somewhere between 30 and 25 in my top favorites. I like this guy even more than Daimyo. He's really threatening, has a fast-paced, aggressive moveset, and his gear is sick. Adding Bleed to his attacks was also a great idea. I think his claw-sharpening jump attack in GU is a perfectly designed move and one of the best in that game. The rest about Shogun was also really sick. 4 out of 5. Number 119. Kecha Wacha. The first of the monkey-fanged beasts I got to fight. Immediately my favorite of the 4 back then. His design is very quirky and has a lot of personality. Overall just really cute and extremely intimidating with his ears over his face. He also makes good use of his environment. 4 stars, another lovely early monster. 4 stars. Kecha Wacha is a really entertaining, weird little monster. It looks wild, pulling inspiration from a variety of animals, and is such a fun take on the monkey monsters. Swinging from the vine ceilings is super cool and gives it a totally unique movement option. It's got a solid fight with a nicely varied selection of attacks. Very good monster, and another I'd be happy to see again. I think he's fantastic. His design is wonderful, his fight looks cool, and he's a great animal. Plus, he has a surprise factor down with his scary face enraged mode. I honestly think all he needs is some new gen treatment. I would love to see him swinging around a jungle or forest in wilds. 5 out of 5. Every generation of Monster Hunter after first gen has its unique features. Dose has seasons, Tri has underwater, 4 and 4U, they've got monster environment interactions. Don't get me wrong, it's not the first gen to have this, nor is it the last. Khezu and Gigginox have been able to climb on walls and ceilings, and you have Giratotus altering the terrain as it moves around in world, but 4 does this much more than I believe any other Monster Hunter. The first monster in the game that you can see this with is actually Celtis. If it does its strafing run into a wall, it'll get stuck like a Diablos charging into an object. But Kecha Wacha is the first monster in the game to make it a defining trait. The way it can swing by the vines overhead makes it immediately stand out. But then you also get the fact that it can glide, its goofy, childish demeanor, and its ears, which it'll cover its face with when angry. Kecha Wacha is just such an oddball monster, and I mean this in the best way possible. 5 stars. 4U was my first game in the series, so the fact that the bombastic ancestral step theme plays for the first time in the first urgent quest in the game against this guy was a really special feeling. I think that's when I got hooked. I love this guy's design and moveset. It's simple for beginners to learn, but has enough oomph in its animations that beginners will still feel good about beating it. Needs to come back badly. Number 118. Brute Tigrex. Brute Tigrex is one of my favorite subspecies to date. Tigrex's strong roar is usually kinda understated, so they made it super overstated. Seeing him stomp around, carrying himself up high, watching the air go into his mouth as he inhales, it's so sick. I'll never get tired of seeing him. I think the more frequent use of roars as attacks does wonders to spice up Tigrex's regular moveset, which mostly just consists of charging. He's especially good in Iceborne. Subspecies that swap the elements of the base monster are usually better than subspecies that don't change or add an element in my opinion, but Brute Tigrex is a good example of a sub who doesn't and still ends up fine. What a fun take on Tigrex. One of base Tigrex's more notable abilities has always been his roar. Taking that and turning it into the primary weapon of a subspecies is a pretty interesting move. Just enough to change the fight up, but it still feels like a Tigrex fight. He doesn't deviate too much, just enough to freshen the encounter. It's also ecologically interesting to think of a predator who uses the sheer volume and force of its roar to attack and defend itself. Side note, but I love the little waddle charge he can do before his charge attack. It's got that perfect blend of imposing and very, very silly. Also, the RAR laser in Iceborne is ridiculous and I love it. I hope he keeps using it in future appearances. Also, his colors are pretty great. I find that black with the lighter colored stripes can be a really tricky design to pull off. In some designs, the body is too dark or the stripes are too bright, that it kind of muddies everything on the shape of the creature. Brute Tigrex pulls it off nicely, I think, especially in Iceborne. 4 out of 5. The flagship monsters have had a bad track record of being given subspecies that are just them but recolored and centered around whatever piece of their fight is the most bothersome. When Tigrex finally got his subspecies in Portable Third, what we got is more of the same, but somehow way better than before. Tigrex is the roaring wyvern, and boy does Brute dial that up. The thing is, that's now his favorite thing to do, and his moveset is geared more towards fighting you in mid-range between charges and stomps to create mix-ups. It feels really different from the original. He throws rocks more often than he wants to chase you around. He's marketed in the lore to be the more aggressive version of Tigrex, but in practice I've always found his fight to be more chill. The base Tigrex is always running and jumping around like a little crack baby bulldog, either straight for you or to the other side of the room. Brute is more inclined to actually stay still still, which is a nice change of pace. What's really neat is that he's introduced in the Volcano, somewhere we've never seen Tigrex before. In 4th gen, there's a bit more overlap between him and the base Tigrex when it comes to maps, but generally he's on maps that the original isn't in. He's also now weak to water instead of thunder, which I appreciate. I fondly remember coming after him with leveled up Kecha Wacha Greatsword and the Shark Lance and some of the other really funny silly weapons. Water element is usually a lot more accessible than thunder in the early parts of the game, so by the time you unlock Brute, you have better things to use on him than you do when you get to the base Tigrex. In Iceborne, Brute Tigrex takes some of those Wind Tunnel Roar moves from a Cantor, and I honestly think they're even better on him. I started to give him 4, but I changed my mind to a 5. I think this is how a flagship subspecies should feel. He's less of a headache than the original, not more. Number 117, Daimyo Hermitaur, the actual MVP. Daimyo is this perfect level of low difficulty and varied moveset that makes him such a relaxing hunt without turning him into a brain-dead boss. I think that's what makes him one of the more respectable hunts in the series. I like that he's a low-tier crab, but at the same time he can guard and jump and dig and strafe and beam and pin. He's nice and complex, and his dual blades are a sword and shield, which is kinda goofy, and I like that. 4 stars. The crabs are so unique in the roster. All hail the happy crab idle animation. This one is also cool because it's a giant crab that uses its massive claws like a shield. His fight in Sunbreak was fantastic. Man, we need a new crab. It's been 18 years, damn it. Daimyo's great. He's an amazing marriage between realism and Monster Hunter fantasy. A hermit crab with shields for claws that can shoot water jets and has a wyvern skull for a shell is such a great mixture of ideas. Only complaint that I have is that I'd like to see him use the Monoblow skull a little more in combat. I never put Daimyo in my top 20, hell, he might not even be in my top 50, but he's an amazing monster. In my opinion, the crabs kinda have a leg up on the competition, because unlike the flying wyverns or the birds, there's really kinda nothing quite like the crabs in the series. Every aspect of them feels wholly unique, both fight and ecology-wise. Daimyo himself gets a huge bump up for me due to his Sunbreak adaptation, as that one has a lot more speed and, dare I say, personality. While I prefer Shogun, Daimyo has definitely earned a high placement from me. 4 out of 5.